All right, welcome to week 6. By the end of this week, you should have all turned in your hard news stories. So I'm looking forward to reading those. If you have already written it and you've looked over it, I would give it one more edit for AP. So AP style, you had the quizzes and the exercise last week. I haven't graded everybody's yet, depending on when you turned yours in. But most of us missed a little bit, one or two, and that's understandable. AP is not something that you just quickly pick up on. It's you have to constantly reference it. If you did really poorly on it, it's a good indicator right now to go back and make sure you study it and really understand it, and to spend extra time when you're editing your hard news story for those AP mistakes. Because that is going to be part of what I'm grading on, right? Did you follow AP style? Kind of goes along with grammar. So that's another thing that you have to edit for. Editing should take you, hours. If you do it right, it's going to take you a couple hours because you're going to be editing for, did I use appropriate quotes? How is my story structure? Did I do proper spelling and grammar? Do I have good length of paragraphs? Did I use AP style correctly? Right? We're starting to see all the things I'm going to make you consciously be editing for. So, it's going to take you a while to do it. It's not something you just look through once or twice and say, okay, good. If you do it right, it's going to take you some time. But it will also greatly improve your grade. I also want to just point to in your direction here. I added this to Blackboard. I've added the 2 links here. So this is the AP style guide. Let me open this. It's going to take a second, but this is the link that I had from last week. And then this is the other one. Here we go. Oh, you know what? I don't know. It's giving me some. Yeah, here it goes. So here's the guide that I have. And then this other one here is the Purdue AP style, which I won't make it so you don't have to sit and watch this load now for another 2 minutes. But Purdue AP style guide, that was that other link that was more in depth. So use these as your references when you're editing for your AP mistakes in your hard news story, and then the other stories that we do beyond this assignment that you're just going to be turning in. This is what you want to be editing for. Go back and make sure that you're following these guidelines. So I put them here in Blackboard. And you guys, I'm really looking forward to reading those stories. I know you've been working hard on them. I look forward to seeing, the kind of reporting that you did and learning about what you covered. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this week. You got 3 chapters, 14, 15, and 16. I know there are 3 chapters, but they're small chapters, so it shouldn't be too much for you. But, we got 3 chapters, and then the usual. You've got a quiz, and you've got an exercise. The exercise are number 1 and 2. We'll have to look on homework. I forget the page now. 285, I think. But it's the number 1 and 2 questions for the exercise, and you guys know what you're doing now with that. Finish your hard news story that we talked about, and of course, keep reading news stories every day. I do want to talk about something that's you're going to be reading about. So, one of these chapters talks about media law, and your exercises are going to be going over media law. And something you're going to read about is something called actual malice. So the book describes it too, but I just want to verbally give you, my take on it as well. Actual malice is a term that's come up through court cases. So it doesn't necessarily make sense just on the surface when you hear it. But what actual malice, what is the courts have determined with that, is that if we're going to be learning about libel, right? And so libel is when you write something about someone that's completely negligent and false. So, for example, if you were to write in an opinion piece or in a news story, Professor Chiara isn't a good professor, right? I can't sue you for libel. I could sue you, but I'll lose. I can't sue you for libel, or I can sue you where I'm going to lose because you are allowed to have an opinion, right? So by saying I'm not a good professor, or that I'm unorganized, or I don't grade fairly, or whatever it is that you say, that is an opinion, and you're allowed to write opinions. Now, if you said something like, you write something like, Professor Chiara is a terrible professor because I know that he is distracted because all he does is drink every night, and he doesn't get any sleep because he's up all day, all night kicking dogs and going out and vandalizing the neighborhood, right? That's where I could sue you for libel, because the opinion part was I'm a bad professor, and okay, you can certainly say that. The assertions and the accusations of accusing me of, drinking too much and going out and, kicking dogs all night and vandalizing the neighborhood, if you don't have any evidence, if you have no proof that I'm doing that, I can sue you for libel because now you're making false accusations against me, right? it's also negligence too. So let's say you heard from somebody and say, "Oh yeah, Professor Chiara. The reason why he's such a bad professor is because he drinks all night and he never sleeps because he just vandalizes. He's out all night, causing trouble." And then you say that, um, and then I sue you. I could still win because you might say, "Well, I didn't know. Somebody told me that. One of your friends told me that, Professor Chiara. I thought they would know." It's still negligence. You didn't have proof. You didn't have evidence. I know I'm getting a little deep in the weeds, but I do want I think you need to hear this to make the point, right? So that is what we're learning about. Where the line is between libel, so where you write something that's just completely false and negligent, and where you can actually write an opinion. Something else also to keep in mind, though, I said all that stuff about I could sue you for libel. Let's say you did have video of me drinking all night, drinking and vandalizing, or I got arrested for multiple times for vandalizing the neighborhood. Those kinds of things. You have evidence. You have proof. Well, now you can publish that kind of stuff because you can say that Professor Chiara has been, he drinks and does this, because you can say that stuff because you have some kind of proof. So truth is always, and evidence is always a defense against libel, right? So now let's take it to where I was talking about before. That's libel. Let's talk about actual malice now. So, there's a certain standard when it comes to what you can say about other people if they're just a regular person. And professors, some of these are kind of gray areas, but let's just say to your classmates. If you write this stuff about your classmates, none of you are celebrities, none of you are elected officials, I don't think, none of you are prominent, people that are recognizable. So you are all met kind of like the average person in that category. And even me, a professor is usually put in that category. Some of them that are more well known, maybe that's like a gray, some of these are gray lines. But for most of us, right, we're in this general category where if you write something about somebody else, and like I said, it's harming to the reputation, causing some kind of damage, that's the standard you have to meet. Actual malice is a standard above, and that's what we apply to celebrities, politicians, person of prominence. You ever wonder why why you see things in like I don't know, in those magazines when you're in the supermarket, Esquire, not Esquire, what are those other ones? I can't think of them right now, but the ones that are like, Brad Pitt is now a drug addict and has stolen all his kids from Angelina Jolie. Those kinds of stories. Sure, the celebrity can take them to court, but the celebrity has a harder level to prove. They have to prove that the person really damaged their reputation because of it. And so I don't want to get too much into this right now because your book is going to cover actual malice. But what you need to really know is that actual malice is a higher standard, right? It's a higher standard, and it's applied towards people of prominence, people that are well known. So you are actually allowed to, you don't want to. I'm not saying it's good ethical practices, and most journalists won't do this, or average person hopefully doesn't do this. But you have a higher standard. You're able to say more. You're able to criticize more. You're able to make more assertions. And not have to, have less of a chance of actually being sued, right? As opposed to a regular person where it's just you have to meet a less threshold. So this might sound really confusing right now if this is the first time you've ever heard of these terms. The book is going to help you make much more sense, but I wanted to at least set it up for you that's what we're talking about when we talk about libel and actual malice. There is a difference, so just be aware of that. And in your book now, hopefully you'll start to see, what I want you to get out of that chapter with media law and with the exercise is by the end of it, you should have a really clear understanding of what's an opinion. So what can I write as an opinion about someone or something? What's libel? So what is something that I write that could be that I could get in trouble for because it is hurting someone's reputation, it's false, it's negligent, right? And then the third tier of that is what is actual malice? And that is what's the threshold for people of prominence and celebrities and politicians, right? What is the different standard that gets applied to them than it does to the average person for libel? After you read the chapter, hopefully that all makes sense. After you do your exercise, that will maybe make a little bit more sense for you in the quiz. But it is kind of a confusing concept. So as always, if you do have a very specific question that you still are a little confused about, please message me with your specific question, and I'd be happy to try to answer it the best I can, or maybe direct you to another source or another link, a story that can help define that for you. Because it is a really important concept to understand. It's just as far as you as news consumers. So when you see things that are written, you can understand Is it an opinion, or did they cross the line? And then also, of course, for you as writers. And just be aware, especially now in the social media age, this doesn't just apply if you're working for a news organization. You could have your own blog, you could write something on social media, and you're going to see these cases pop up now more and more where you have a blog and you write about someone, you could be sued for libel. You don't have to be working for the Hartford Courant or the New York Times. You just write something personally about someone, you could still be sued for libel. So it's good for you just all to understand as media producers in this world, and we all are media producers because we're all on social media and writing things publicly. You should understand the laws of opinion, libel, actual malice. All right, so I think that was a pretty good introduction to that. Here, of course, is your homework. So you see you have your quiz, your media law exercise, and your hard news story due. All right, again, don't forget, you got the AP links here. Please edit your news stories for AP style. And then, other than that, I think we're all in pretty good shape. Keep it up. You guys are doing a great job. People are turning things on time. They're quality work. A hard news story, I'm sure you've been really working on really hard on, but finish strong with it. Spend the time to edit, because that really will make or break your grade, a full letter grade sometimes I see, just based on the editing. All right, nice job, everybody. I'll see you next week.